let me explain what's going on here. The government is offering, I call this a payroll. Well, I think they call it the payroll. Remember the whole name of it?
Payroll Protection Program.
Payroll Protection Program. Thank you. Oh, God, I'm having a senior moment here. And what's going on here is the government is basically guaranteeing you to not fire your employees, and they will pay your employees' salaries. Not only will they pay their salaries, but they will pay for rent that you're incurring, that you might have to incur. If you have a mortgage payment on a commercial building of some type, they'll pay you that. They'll pay for your utilities. So they'll pay a number of these type of expenses. In fact, it even says here, rent, mortgage interest, utilities, and employees' salaries. That includes their health insurance, by the way. So they're essentially guaranteeing that. What's interesting is you go to the SBA site, you apply for this loan. You can get interest rates of up to 4%. Now, you can get an expedited approval. And the way you do this, by the way, is you simply go into a bank. Any FDIC approved bank will do this. You go through your local bank to get this kind of loan. You usually will get it. They say you'll get it within 14 days. I can just see millions and millions of people applying. Good luck trying to get it in 14 days. We'll see if that overwhelms the system, but they say that's what they're supposed to be able to do. It's usually for approved expenses like payroll, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. The key is, after 8 weeks of doing this, if you have the same average payroll as when the loan was granted, then the loan will be forgiven. So essentially, as long as you're using this to pay all these expenses, you don't have to pay it back. It's effectively a grant. In other words, free money. Again, free money. This is covering all of your payroll. And you might say, well, what happens if I didn't suffer too much from this? All you have to show is you suffered a little bit from the coronavirus thing, maybe a little bit of loss in business, and you get this loan. And so essentially, you'd have had to pay these anyway. Hey, that's like a double benefit to you. So that this is all in addition to all the other benefits. Now, you might say, well, what happens if I'm self-employed and I don't have employees? No problem. You can still cover for your utilities that you incurred if you have for a business, mortgage interest, if you have mortgage interest for that business, and rent, maybe you rented an office or something like that, it'll cover you for that. So, this is, again, stimulus money that is available to you and by being in business. We call that 7A money, and you just go to your local bank, and that's how you apply for this type of loan. It's considered an SBA 7A loan, just so you know what to tell the banker.
And a couple of interesting things on this loan as well. So it's it's forgivable, right? So they're going to look at, like Sandy said, they're going to look at the head count of your employees. It also doesn't cover paying payroll for people that make over $100,000, more than $100,000. So I mean, it covers them, but it covers them up to $100,000, I believe. So you can't take a Fortune 500 CEO pay through this program.
Right. You're not going to be able to give yourself major bonuses and things like that.
Right, but you'll be able to at least pay
you will be covered. If you're a corporation, they will cover you for your salary, other than bonuses and things like this, but things that occurred prior to this. Now, by the way, the important point here, what kinds of documentation do you need? You certainly want to bring your financial statements showing what your and any canceled checks and other evidence to show what your payroll was prior to getting this loan on a month-by-month basis over the last, let's say, 6 months. You want to show what your utilities are. You want to show what your rent is. You want to show what your mortgage interest is. So you want to be able to prove those things. You want to bring I'm glad you mentioned this, by the way, Jake. You want to be able to bring that type of documentation with you to the bank to show them these things.
Yeah. And I've also heard, this is going to be managed by banks. And so I know that in some places banks are closed, or like if you're in a shelter in place or something, but they're not really usually closed. They're usually just, there's places that are open, or there's branches that are open. You can do this over the phone with some of, and through the internet with today's technology. Just call your bank and figure out what the best way to work with them is. There's a little bit of latitude with banks on what they can do here, and their approval process, but it's generally going to be based on bringing in payroll records and your rent records and anything that you're trying to do that from January 1st to February 29th. They'll also be looking potentially at the prior year. You do have to be in business for a year, have been in business for a year to get these loans. So that is one interesting thing. I called Wells Fargo this morning to find out what the process was or if they had guidance yet. I was told that they were still waiting for Wells Fargo executives to push that information back down. They said they would probably know by the end of this week how they're going to administer those. Call your own bank. I don't know. It's going to be on a bank by bank basis, but that SBA is putting out the guidelines. It's going to roll down to the banks, and the banks will then put in their own processes for getting these out. But really exciting. We're applying for this, so that we can cover our employees and everything like that. Definitely something if you have those expenses. But this is just one type of loan. Sandy's really excited to tell you about the other kind of loan, which we will talk about right after we talk about payroll taxes.
Should have put it the other here, but all right. All right, another benefit. When you hire employees, when you have employees, you got to pay payroll taxes. Well, the government's giving you a break. All the payroll taxes that you pay, first of all, you don't have to pay them normally when they're due, which is usually in the first quarter or the second quarter of the year and so on. But now, one half of the payroll taxes you can not pay until December 31st, 2020. So you get a whole delay for the rest of this year. And then the other half of the payroll taxes you would owe for this year, you only have to pay by December 31st, 2021. So you move essentially what would normally be due by December 31st, 2020. Let me make sure I'm saying this correctly. You don't have to pay until December 31st, 2021. So you get an entire year delay of 50% of your payroll taxes. And then you get another delay to the other 50% due by December 31st, 2022. So the bottom line is you're getting a full year to 2 year delay on your payroll taxes. You get 1 year delay of 50% and another 50% delay for the second year. So that's another benefit. You don't have to pay these payroll taxes by December 31st, 2020. Okay.
So what I love about this is if you get that first loan, right, the forgivable loan, there's 4% interest, but it's for 2.5 months or whatever to cover the costs. But then they're delaying payroll. So that payroll savings is going to more than offset so you can pay off that loan really, really fast. And then you get basically 2 years to make up for the payroll taxes, which is really cool. So cash, it's a way to free up cash in your business until things blow over.
By the way, Jake,
really
go back to the prior slide. I want to go back to the SBA loan, the 7A loans. I do want to mention a couple things about this that I wanted to cover. If you do fire some people, let's say you fire half your people, then only half of the amount that you're using for the 2.5 months to cover all their wages and things will be forgiven. Otherwise, it becomes a loan. So you want to make sure you keep your staff. Also, if you want the loan, you can also get more than this. You can actually get an SBA loan, which we're going to talk about in the next section coming up. But you want to keep your employees because, as I said, if you do lay them off or furlough them, then what would normally be forgiven completely free to you, you will have to pay back. So be aware of that.
Yeah, that is great. And so the average headcount needs to stay the same. You can still fire bad employees if they're not performing, but average headcount needs to be the same or
that's correct.
Really close. The number is 25%, but the closer you are to 100% with it, then the better you are.
Well, the chances that more than 25% is underperforming is probably slim. That's why they put that number in there. Let's move on to the next slide.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
This is the one you're excited about.
This is the one I'm excited about, guys. You're going to like this, but you got to move fast. And I'm talking today, tomorrow, next day, fast. The government also gave what is known as an emergency income or emergency injury disaster loan, otherwise known as EIDL, okay? What this is you can get a loan as part of a disaster program with SBA, but you can also get, and you can ask in advance to get a $10,000 advance, whether or not the loan is granted. Now, the key is you want to do this, forget about the loan. You're not really doing this for the loan. You're doing this for the advance because this advance will be tax-free to you. This is free $10,000 money, okay? That's the key. Now, if you want to take the loan, you want to take out more money than the $10,000, you can, and you'll pay at 3.75% interest rate. You can borrow more than $10,000. But my suggestion to you at least is you do this to get that nice $10,000 advance. And the way you do that is you submit a statement saying that we, under a written statement saying we solemnly certify that we need this emergency injury disaster loan of $10,000 and we qualify. And essentially that's it. And you just have to have a little bit of impact from the coronavirus situation and you qualify. I mean, basically everybody qualifies. So this is a nice $10,000 advance that will be tax-free. You will not have to pay it back. I want to say that a couple of times. It is free money, okay? Now, to get this though, if you are self-employed, you simply download a business loan application from the SBA site. If you are a formal business like we are at Taxbot, you have to download 2 applications. Okay, there's actually 2 forms that you download and you fill those out.
And actually, Sandy, I actually think they updated the website. I went through this process last night and for both scenarios to see what it would be like. And they actually incorporated, I think they streamlined the processes into one application. You just select which one, and then they may request additional documentation. But that also that asking for 10,000 last night when I went through the process, actually they moved it so now it's just a checkbox in the application.
They improved that. Okay, good.
Yep.
Now
So
there are some optional forms, folks, there that you do not need to file. I might recommend you download them anyway and fill them out because, frankly, I'll tell you why. You want to get this money quickly. You don't want them to delay it. You don't want them to have to look into you more. You get the optional forms, that's going to help you. And one of the optional forms is a financial statement, an optional form, a statement of liability. There's a statement of other administrative requirements. I mean, there's like 4 little optional forms right next to the business loan application that you might want to download and fill out and then send to them, upload to them. Now, here's the problem. It's a very important problem here. There's $10 billion allocated by this law for these kinds of loans, for this economic injury disaster loans. The problem is, if you take 10 billion, you do the math and you divide by 10,000, that gives you 1 million people who can get these loans. The problem is there are 45 million estimates, self-employed people, independent contractors, small businesses in the United States. And I'm not even sure they counted them all right. If you count all the Uber drivers and the Lyft drivers and everything else, I'm not even sure it's even that low. So this is a first come, first served basis. You need to run, not walk, run to the SBA site, download the form and fill it out and send it in. I can't tell you, you got to do this fast. If you want to get that $10,000, it's a free $10,000 for an hour or 2 worth of work. This would only making $5,000 an hour here. So you definitely want to do that. Okay. I can't emphasize this enough.
And just a couple of thoughts on that as well. Like when I went through the process, it took me only about 20 minutes to apply for 2 different businesses. So about 10 minutes each, because I knew a few numbers off the top of my head. And then the other, I mean, this is like you're applying, it's like a 2-step process, right? You're applying for saying you're interested in the loan, but also saying you're interested in the grant, the $10,000 rush. And then when it gets to the loan process, after that, they may request additional documentation. I believe they'll request, normal stuff from you. You'll want to see profit and loss and things like that. And they'll run your credit because you have to prove that, you're credit worthy and things like that. But the $10,000 is kind of not tied to it. It's almost like they said, hey, businesses are hurting. Let's make this $10,000 really quick available to get to them. You'll actually put in your banking information right in the application of where they're going to direct deposit the funds. For that 10,000, right? Then at some way, there's going to be some sort of a underwriting process for the loan amount, which you don't have to take, or, if you do, you don't even put in how much you want right now. You're just basically saying, I want a loan and I want a grant. And so it's kind of a 2-step process. You'll hear from them supposedly within 3 business days. I kind of doubt that's going to happen for sure. I'm sure they're going to get overwhelmed, but it's a very easy process. I think if you have any questions, a lot of people are saying, well, should I apply? Should I not apply? I think it doesn't hurt to apply, right? As long, if you're kind of on the fence, I'm not sure, just apply and see what happens.
Now, I do want to mention, the one thing I do want to mention, if you do get a forgiven $10,000, this will reduce the amount that you will get forgiven from the other type of loan, the 7A loan. They do integrate with each other. So be aware of that. But if you don't, certainly if you don't qualify for the other one, or you don't get much because you don't have any employees, then this is something you really want to look at, because this works for virtually any business. You could be a realtor, you could be an Uber driver, you could be a network marketer, I believe, you can be a doctor. I mean, this works for any business. It's free money. I mean, you can get this $10,000 advance and it's free. I mean, it's tax-free money. I mean, that's just, can't beat that.
And we don't know all the details of how it works, right? I mean, there's going to be some stuff, but the way the legislation is written is how we're interpreting this. Also, there's questions that we're getting a lot about, like, can I do this with multiple businesses? I did, right? I have some interest in multiple businesses. We applied for multiple businesses that were affected. I believe it's on a business level, but I think it's worth. I mean, it's worth applying, right? You never know what's going to happen on the back end. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched, but I would definitely do it because you got really nothing to lose.